Hello and welcome to my channel. Well, it's time to do an iswa update. I've got some notes together on some things that I have noticed over the last few days, and I'm going to go over them with you. First of all, I'm just going to go over them so you guys kind of get an idea of all the subjects that we're going to cover here. Uh, Now we're talking about on the magnetosphere tool, Y-cut, uh, more compression, electromagnetic barrier, rhythmic data gaps, cutting out closed field lines, the tilt, and I got a timestamp I want to show you all. It's just 5 or 6 frames that are interesting that I want to just document uh, that I saw and others have seen it too, and it just basically throws. I just want to point it out. So very interesting, slightly disturbing. Um, Something like that generally doesn't happen in nature symmetry, and you'll find out. Okay, so obviously you can tell I have changed my layout a little bit. The folk radiation belts signets are no longer updating. As I was looking through the layouts on ISWA, and they're all under here, a lot of them have stopped working in since last month. It was actually difficult to find something that. No, I'll take that back. I did find. It took me a while to find this that was working and up to date. Shows the corona holes on the sun and their number. And it was the cool thing about this is it'll show you which way the sun rotates and how the corona holes rotate across as the sun spins on its axis. Well, in previous videos you've seen sunspots photos that a friend of mine took in, and he has them in the with this timestamp photos of them doing circles around the face, and that's not because of the sun. The sun is still doing what it's been doing. It's our perception of it. But you can find that. I do have a video on that. Moon roll and more probably had it, and then there was probably one where I know there's one where I specifically said the sun is rolling too, along with Jupiter and all the planets. Hello, and that video. Oh, the sun is rolling as well from our view here on Earth. Check out the video. Alright, so let's just back that up. Okay, I opened out. Alright, good. So, I guess you got to start at where Discover and ACE is going on, coming from the sun, out at the L1 Lagrange point. That's where Earth is sitting, also in the Lagrange point. Anyway, so you can see the conditions. Speeds are below 600 kilometers per second. Densities are, below 10 at the moment. 7s, 8s. So pretty consistent data. No data gaps in here. The phi angle still, even though I understand magnetics, this graph just working on it. Okay, so let's just go with the data gaps. Data gaps are pretty easy to tell. You can see just by looking at this 6-hour video clip. This is up to date. You can see how it's just changing dramatically every few seconds on here. And if you watch the timestamp, you'll see good 4-hour chunks, 2 to 3 hour, 4-hour chunks taken out. The scale will tell you the dramatic changes, and the magnetics as well tells you there's data gaps. Now, I'm going to pause it and move it by hand. This is one thing I like to do is when I load up ISWA is I'll just stop the play and just grab it and slide it fast. Because then you can see things that are happening quickly. Pick patterns out, anything rhythmic, because it's flashing at you. You're not looking at it slowly. There's one thing I'm going to cover too. Boom, ba-dum, ba-bum. See, all right. So now, yeah, I'm sure you can see these. Now the other thing I'm going to show you is that if you watch here up front in the horn, there you go. Along with the data gaps, there's also showing us that that is changing. The tilt of the planet is actually changing that fast. And that has been confirmed by watching ISWA and taking compass readings of where the sun rose or set in a 24-hour, 48 or 72-hour period, constantly watching how magnetically it's positioned, how it changes from day to day. Knowing that how the Earth's tilt is, we know we should see no more than 1 degree of week in, how the seasons work. So that tilt, that is confirmable, but these are so tight together, it's going to be difficult to tell with the compass and the sun rising or set location every morning or evening. Compression, electromagnetic barrier. We got the data gaps are pretty rhythmic. And you'll notice that we know there are not more times where closed field lines which are here. But it seems like a lot of the cut data is right around those times where Earth would be pushing, or has been. So it seems to me that the data gaps are happening around that time. So it's probably, and that's an extreme amount of energy flowing through those field lines, and I think that's contributing to the satellites are going into safe mode on a fairly rhythmic pattern now to protect themselves from all this. And you can see the induction heating here with all the red colors. The word density or pressure, however you want to think of it, is fairly strong through all these frames. So it's probably a good reason why we're getting these data gaps is instrumentation is shutting down to protect itself from the environment, or the communication between the satellite and Earth is being blocked by the conditions. I don't think it's NASA just cutting things out personally. I think logical reasons make more sense than conspiracy theories. Oh, NASA, government's doing this and that. So, yes, they have capabilities, but simplest answer tends to rule out. Okay, so now as you saw as I'm moving it, you probably noticed something that was fairly consistent throughout this. And that is the electromagnetic barrier, or our little IMF friend called, some people have a nickname for him. Let's get him to show up really well. Here's a decent one. The blue IMF signature that has, by definition of the signet itself, blue color IMF, not associated with Earth's magnetic field at all. Now that, as you can see, that's pretty much always there now. It's interesting what I mean by electromagnetic barrier, because energy moves until it hits a energy or physical barrier. Let's find that one spot again. Where is it? It's in here. Where was that really good? Is it right there? These will work. It's just not the best example. There was a really clear one. It was less field lines, less entanglement, fairly easy to decipher for the beginner. Okay, this will work. Now, as you saw, we talked about the blue IMF signature. Okay, well, that is another field, so that is an energy barrier, and the magnetic field from Earth reacts accordingly as well. So imagine a balloon that you're going to inflate, but this is a really tough balloon. It stretches over things and doesn't tear. Uh, Now, if you were to inflate that balloon over an object, that is, the balloon will continue to inflate around this object, but that object is ungiving. It won't move. So the balloon goes around it. Well, here's the same thing. The magnetic field, or these pushes, these close field lines, do form against that barrier and have to go around it. It's just the laws of physics. Now, as you're scanning through, you can see that this barrier wasn't so prominent all the time. It was, you would see its effects occasionally, and as time has gone on over the 2 or 3 years I've been watching this, that has just become more prominent. And it doesn't move. It never moves, but it it didn't show itself so much in every aspect of every frame like it does now. The slow train like is slowly pushing forward. The, the planet is in constant induction heating here, clearly. Let's see. So, since the Earth's magnetic field is, I talked about more compression, electromagnetic barrier, you clearly more. I guess I'm just overanalyzing it. Okay. If you got a question about that, put it in the comments. I'm not. I don't want to beat the dead horse anymore. Okay, so let's just go. I wanted to throw this to 300 real quick. Maximum I know about. And show you a little timestamp. There we go. 312, 12, 12. Here we go. Now, if you pay attention here and here, it slowly moves back over the frames. But pay attention how everything is just so symmetrical. This is very unusual, just something I want to point out. I'm going to move forward a frame, and again, you even have the loops. The loop's very symmetrical. Continues on. Now, bear in mind that these are blue IMFs, so you have a magnetic field here, and a magnetic field here, and a magnetic field here that none of it belongs to Earth. So that tells you everything is magnetic, so it's other magnets, just like Earth. So let's get back to those. I just want to put these out. These are very interesting. I mean, it's just so symmetrical. Nature does not work. Nature is not symmetrical. So that's the only thing I didn't like do a video on it right then and there. Now, while I have that open, let me just point that out real quick. So if here, here, and here, is the owl. But I probably should show you just this first. Ferrocell, taken from one of Scientific Lee's videos, just a snapshot. Just make sure this is the video that is from Scientific Lee. So you have the way the field shows, and we know life is electromagnetic. So there's your owl. So that's what it reminded me of. I saw this and I went looking for the owl, a good owl picture, and this, because I knew I'd seen it. Okay, so that shows. So I set this up to, this is pretty much 300 frames. Generally, I believe that gives you 12 hours, but with all the data gaps, you're looking at almost over 48 hours of data because it's so many drops. Hey, Lagrange point. Sun does the same thing. So does the Earth. Now, I've kind of changed my opinion on where they say X marks the spot on these, because this is pretty much always where the field lines, the separate field lines of the blue signet of blue, like this. They're always the same location. So I don't call those. I no longer think these are individual magnets. These are just the same as these. They're at the same points. You know, from here, 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 and here. And see, they're all pretty much the same. Okay, well. Oh. I was actually going to show you this. I had it saved. You know, things, it's always been explained that this is, the IMF is supposed to show the way that this tool is set up is the one out front signifies the sun, and then there's 8, and they're generally fairly straight to show the 8 other planets in our solar system, their magnetic representation on this tool. This is how it would look, minus the electromagnetic, the magnetic signatures in blue back here. If you ignore that and ignore the double induction heating and polar cap lines crossing, making Lagrange points. If you could ignore all that, this would be a fairly normal frame. Yeah, this is the old normal, if you could ignore all that on there. All right, so as I've been pointing out, we saw lots of data gaps in the satellites that are orbiting around the inside Earth's magnetic field, just like this. Oh, that just looks horrible. Now, this magnetopause signet is, you can see the data gaps fairly regular here. If you watch the satellites here, and this is looking down at the North Pole. This tool is if you were out to the side in line with the equator of the Earth. This one's looking down. So these are the satellites are showing geosync orbit. If you watch, so you can also see the data gaps very well as the satellites are. I mean, the satellites, I don't know how often they make a rotation, but this is, it's probably, let's see, 13, well, about 30 hours and almost about 3 or 4 revolutions. So in a normal 6-hour window, which is what I still have on this signet, we would see just a little bit, maybe a quarter rotation or a third rotation around in that 6-hour time, but the data gaps are so frequent. We're seeing 3 or 4 revolutions. Neat little thing I noticed. So keep an eye out. The slow train wreck is getting worse. Things that used to be infrequent are now frequent. So your compression around the Earth is getting worse. I mean, it's channeled. It has to stay within that frame. It can't, as the compression increases, the energy being released has to stay in, is forced into a single channel, and you're seeing this. There's no big pushes. They're all being cut out by data drops. So we're not getting a very good picture of what's going on, except that the same thing. A lot of wobble in the earth. Uh, as I explained earlier, more compression. The electromagnetic barrier is much more consistent and noticeable. Rhythmic data gaps. A lot of the closed fail line pushes are cut out. Uh, Tilt or the wobble of the earth is pretty significant right now. And some new anomalies, like the rhythmic IMF and stuff we were seeing I showed you. So there you go. That's my take on it. Enjoy the rest of your day.